This week on Inside Olympia, how is AI changing education? What are the challenges and opportunities the technology offers in the classroom? Will it help students or hurt them? On the program, State School Superintendent Chris Reykdal, plus two district-level educators, Adam Aguilera, a Vancouver middle school teacher, and Cassondra Smith, a technology coordinator in the Battleground Schools.
From the TBW studio, it's Inside Olympia with host Austin Jenkins.
Welcome to Inside Olympia. Artificial intelligence seems like it burst onto the scene just a couple of years ago, but it's already changing how teachers teach and how students learn. What opportunities does the technology offer, and what challenges or problems does it create? Will it help students or hinder their learning and intellectual development? How are teachers using AI? And what direction is the state giving to school districts on how to incorporate the technology into the learning environment? In our second half, we'll hear from some frontline district-level educators. But joining me first is State School Superintendent Chris Reykdal. Welcome back to the program. Nice to see you. Happy new school year.
Thanks for having me.
Before we get to AI, because I have you here, I want to ask you about a couple of hot topics. One is test results that were announced this week from the state Smarter Balance test for 4th, 8th, 10th graders. I understand they're up slightly in most categories. How are you receiving that information, responding to what you're seeing in terms of the trend lines?
Yeah, so the recovery continues, I would say, albeit slow and differentiated. So one of the biggest things we observe is, well, overall scores are kind of inching up further, which is nice. Our students who are not free and reduced price lunch, which is roughly half our kids, they're really re-accelerating. And our students who are on free and reduced price lunch, so our higher poverty communities, they're definitely not improving as fast. So those gaps persist. But it's nice to see overall gains. And the other thing we look at is, are students growing from year to year the way they were pre-pandemic? So is their growth curve through the years similar? And we finally see that. We finally see the acceleration from 3rd to 4th to 5th grade at the pace of the pre-pandemic.
I know that people are going to point to a stat like 57% of 8th graders meeting foundational grade level progress in math and say, gosh, that's not even 6 and 10. And what about those other 4 and 10?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, we look at multiple measures. So this test is supposed to be very high achieving. It's rigorous, if you will. We're second in the 12 states that take this, and in English language arts, we're 4th in math, and so we tend to be on the higher end of this thing. And it's meant to be hard. So like, think of a baseball player. When they hit the ball 1 out of every 4 times, they're an all-star, right? And in this case, this is a test where 60% of our students in math are going to show that like university readiness by 10th grade. It's not fair to say the other 40% are, profoundly struggling. Some of them are, but we go then and look at their college participation rates. And even students who get what we call a 2, that foundational level, roughly half of them are going to college, and 2/3 of them are persisting into their second year. So our assessments mean something. We want to see that trend. We want to understand big picture. It's not a good assessment for understanding where an individual kid is.
There does seem to be, though, sort of this contention over how much to read into these and whether this is an indication of a bunch of kids falling behind or not succeeding, versus your contention that you're not really happy with these assessments and what they measure and how they measure, and don't think that, as I understand it from our previous conversations, that we should run to the bank based on these, or run perhaps to, the principal's office and say, what's going on here? But as parents are reading these and trying to understand their significance, how do we essentially reconcile these sort of dueling views of the meaning of these test results?
I would say embrace both the views. So the fact that half of our kids take their first kindergarten readiness assessment and half of them aren't ready. They don't meet basic numeracy, counting. They don't make basic literacy. Our school system moves them so that 2/3 of them are ready for college by 10th grade. So that's a good thing, right? We really develop kids well. And it should bother people that half our kids come in struggling, and by the end, 40% of them are still, at grade level in parts, but not in whole. So it's a...
And certainly not university ready.
Right, and the universities don't accept that many students anyways, but when you get to our other institutions, they have great access. So it's a both question. We shouldn't shy away from the fact that we have a lot of work to do, and we should lean into the fact that a single test doesn't define anyone, and in fact, we tend to be relatively high amongst our peer states.
Bottom line.
That's a good story.
Bottom line, what could be done to more quickly close this gap, help those kids who are struggling to perform well on these tests?
Intervene much earlier. So don't wait till you know they're struggling in 3rd and 4th grade reading to create interventions, which means universal early learning. I know it's pricey for some people, but kids' brains are forming more.
Well, it's pricey for taxpayers.
Potentially, yeah. Student brains are forming in a way that's more powerful from birth to 5 than they're ever going to get the rest of their lives in terms of absorbing language and literacy. So really early investments are key. The state pulled back like $1 billion there. That's a big mistake. We need to be doubling down on that and then intervening, not just starting in 3rd grade when we see trouble, but earlier than that. That's the best way to do it.
And one more question about that. We have, and I've asked you about this before, we've been in a trend of increasing K-12 education, at least in the sense of the McCleary decision. I know there's been some erosion as a percentage of the state budget in recent years, but there's also these sort of two trajectories that people may look at, which is, okay, we're spending more money in education. Why aren't we getting better, higher results?
Well, I think we are, because the results are more than test scores, right? We're getting students who are more prepared for the world, even though it's not on there. We're going to talk about artificial intelligence. There's not been a better generation in the world for technology adaptation. It matters a lot to the labor market. So more of these kids are leaving with those skills and industry credentials, but that stuff isn't on tests. So again, it's both. It's a do both. And I always say to folks, if your employer promised you a 10% pay raise because they're behind and they finally come through, should you be 10% better the next year? No, they were so far behind that they owed you the dollars, and now we're already about $500 per student behind where we were 6 or 7 years ago, adjusted for inflation. So I have never bought into that we've invested a lot in education, we should get overnight results. I've said the legislature's done their job to keep up with the minimum the court required in the face of enormous changes in kids and society. So I'm very proud of our education system, and we have a lot of work to do to maintain where we are and improve.
What is your message to legislators who are coming into a supplemental budget session, still tight budget constrained environment, but who are also have a paramount duty to fund education?
Well, my message is, if you're not willing to change the tax code and stop hammering the middle class and low income students, if you're not willing to make that change, don't take it out on kids. Don't take it out on early learners. Don't take it out on our K-12 students. Don't take it out on university students and college students and apprenticeship students who are the future of our economy. I know they want to do all the things. You got to do the highest leverage things, and education's where it's at.
So you're saying at least hold education harmless.
Do better than that. Make the revenue changes necessary to invest, or make reductions in other areas that don't give you the same yield as investing in kids.
I want to ask you about one other topic before we get to AI that's, again, very timely. School has just started, and your office announced that 3/4 of school districts now have some sort of policy in place limiting the use of smart devices, phones, watches in the schools. I think 53% of the districts actually limit that just to instructional time. 31% say it's away for the day. Yeah. Your office put out some guidance on this, but it's not a mandate. What is your feeling about the level of buy-in and adoption at this point?
Really positive. We've seen it around the country, as a matter of fact, and in our state.
A number of states have passed laws.
Yeah, so our legislature could do that. I think what they said is, let's see what kind of voluntary compliance we get if OSPI issues the guidance. Local control matters here. I know we always talk about that a lot. Some communities embrace it quickly, and others say it's actually not been an issue for us, or maybe they already had a policy. So you see a lot of elementary school systems saying it's off, don't even bring it to school. And you see the middle high school folks kind of cutting a deal with families saying, I know you want to get a hold of your kid for appointments. That's going to happen before school, at lunch, or after school. And they're making sure it's not on during the class period. The tighter the framework we've seen in national research, the better the compliance and the better the support. And the more loosey-goosey it is, the worse it is. So what I keep saying is, don't leave this up to each teacher. As much as you can, have a district policy, stick with your policy.
There have been proposals, and there's likely to be proposals to pass a state law that is more of a mandate. Are you supportive of that? Would you like to see school districts being told they have to limit or restrict the use of these devices?
I'm okay if it's that the goal is limitation and then giving districts a menu of options. If it's one size fits all in every community and every school, it's just not going to work. Your elementary classroom is very different than your high school alternative or your regional skills center or something. So yes, if the state wants to make sure every district has a policy and get that last 25% of districts, I'm for it, as long as there's a menu of how districts can achieve this with local community input.
Let's transition to talk about the role of artificial intelligence in education. and the fact that it's already there. Students are already using ChatGPT and other tools. Teachers are already experimenting with how to use it, some, maybe not a lot. What is your general sense as we enter the 2025-26 school year about the extent to which AI is a part of K-12 education versus still kind of on the margins?
It's in the middle of everything.
It's in the middle of everything. So it's
yes.
here in a big way.
It's here in a big way because students are making it in a big way. Teachers are doing it. We're doing it in our everyday lives. We're seeing the power of the tool, and like every technology, it's got amazing things we can achieve with it, and it's got downsides. And so unlike social media, which we blew 20 years ago, this thing came in and crashed in, and we said, oh, that'll be something that stays in the home. We didn't realize the impacts on our society, on student mental health. So we're not making that mistake. In K-12 in this state, I was one of the first in the country to say, we're going to lean into this and embrace it, because when you do that, you get the best of the technology and you teach kids about the downside of it. So don't ignore it like it's something just in the private sector. Make it a part of the learning environment, and it's happening everywhere now.
What are school districts obligated to do based on the guidance that OSPI, your agency, has given them?
Yeah, they have to update their technology policies to make very clear to communities, like this is where we stand with AI and this is how we're going to use it or not. This is what cheating still looks like. And by the way, that's actually quite rare, and most of the software people think they're purchasing to catch cheating is terrible. So that locally elected school board has to contextualize this powerful technology in the learning environment within their context. An agricultural community is going to think about it differently than a school that's in the shadow of Microsoft, right? Just based
how
on,
so?
well, different applications. So what is the purpose of what you're developing your kids to do? A preponderance of your kids headed to university. How many of them are going to the ag sector, technology, or apprenticeship? There's tools and pathways now in AI to design a lot of that stuff and to give students very contextualized learning. You and I don't have to read the same book that all the fourth graders are reading. There's a point at which I can customize that as an educator to give you something you're really interested in me for engagement, and that just means local context.
How far out, though, do you think that customized AI, I'll use the word enhanced, although some would say it's not enhanced, education environment looks like? Are we 2 years, 5 years, 10 years out from that?
It's happening now. It's not at scale right now.
But there's individualized cases of this.
Big time, where teachers are saying, I want a story for these 3 kids that focuses on teaching biology, using butterflies as an example. And in this story, I want to teach biology based on, bovine or, something like that. It's incredible what teachers with a little time and energy, which is the hard part, can do to tailor some of this stuff for their students.
Is that also because the ed tech industry has pivoted so quickly and is already offering this technology to districts and selling them on it?
I think so. I mean, everyone's popping up with something. This reminds me of the dot-com boom, where everyone had a solution, which makes me nervous, right? We told our districts when we unveiled this, like, really embrace this possibility and teach yourselves before you teach students a lot of this stuff, and don't get into long-term contracts. These businesses are going to rise and fall as fast as you can imagine. And I think some of that's happening, but the really stable stuff that probably a lot of people are using in Chat and Gemini, these are going to be around a long time. So they're relatively affordable, and there's something that's scalable, and you can work on them right now, knowing that most of those organizations, for example, they've put a lot of work into the ethics and the student data privacy side of this thing. The mom and pop people flaring up telling you they've got a solution tomorrow in math, I'd be a little careful about that.
Why are you confident that the data privacy of students is being protected? I know there are a lot of people who don't like the fact that Google got a toehold and then a foothold and then an arm and then a leg and then the whole body into schools, and now every kid gets a Google Chromebook. There are questions about how that data is being used, and now AI shows up. And if kids are using these applications and AI trains on data and kind of continues right? How do we know our kids' data from K through 12 now isn't going to be used to make a company out there richer?
Well, you're living in a state where the legislature's put a lot of energy into student data privacy. So the good news is our providers in this state understand about de-identified data and not ever create a situation where individual student data and identity can be released. Now, are they in totality an AI grabbing the 50 kids probably in the next 10 minutes who are going to look up an algebra assignment? Yeah, that's all going to go in, but it's not associated with the kid.
Or train on their essay if they put it into...
It's all happening. So the key is, don't be afraid of a technology that you know is going to win out in the end. teach kids into it so they understand the ethical use of it. The example I always give is the car. We thought for sure it was going to destroy a bunch of industries. It probably did, and yet we needed a bunch of mechanics, a bunch of specialists. It's created an entire economic system, and you still know how to operate the car safely, even if you don't know how the engine works in gory detail. Very few people need to know that, but they do need to understand its implications.
I will now put on my parent hat and say, as the parent of high schoolers, which seems like the pivotal time when they're learning to think critically, that the advent of AI is concerning in as much as I want them to read the essays or the books, I want them to do the analysis on their own, and I want them to write the paper that puts that analysis to paper or to their computer screen. I'm not there yet with letting AI help them do that. As I was taught, don't go by the Cliff's Notes at the bookstore down the street, because that's cheating.
You're not wrong, parent. You should lead your family the way it's appropriate for you, and that's how we sort of approach this in education, which is your family's still going to have a set of expectations. And it's amazing how many kids say, I'm not using that. I don't think it's right that I don't do X, Y, and Z. And others say, oh, I'll do that. I'll help build the essay in a heartbeat. It means that educators have to change their approach, right? We thought it was horrible that the calculator was going to replace critical thinking. It didn't. It did make complicated problem solving a little faster, but you still have to demonstrate to your teacher that you understand how to factor quadratic equations in math. So this is the challenge for educators, right? How do I use the tool and move it from like defining a kid's grade by all the work they do to actually making the kid demonstrate that they have content knowledge and critical thinking? We're going to lose to AI if it's all about just prove to me you can go write a paragraph essay. It doesn't mean we have to lose critical thinking, and that is the moment we sit right now.
So OSPI is often involved in developing curriculum, helping to evaluate on sort of a regular cycle curriculum, and then kind of push that out, right? Standards-based. Here's what you guys need to be teaching. Maybe the districts can buy their own curriculum, but there are some expectations at a statewide level of how they do this. How is this going to work with AI? Because as you say, it's being tested, experimented with, but how are we going to standardize it? And how are we going to make sure it is being used as a tool that advances our kids' thinking and doesn't undermine their intellectual development?
Well, this is what PhDs all over the world are figuring out right now. What I would say is a reminder, we set learning standards. So we say, by this grade, this student needs to be able to do X, Y, and Z and demonstrate their knowledge this way. We do not develop curriculum at OSPI. So you're never going to see it like, hey, everyone, this is the AI curriculum you all have to teach. It does say...
So you'll set the standards?
Yep.
And will you do that for AI?
We will, in conjunction with their content knowledge. So nothing changes about the fact that we want kids at a certain place in third grade mathematics and in fourth grade and fifth grade, and they build skills and abilities along the way. That doesn't change at all. The question is, how do you apply the tool? How do you apply the tool?
Well, who's going to teach the teachers how to use the tool?
That's why we're trying to seek resources for this all the time. It's why we put those 3 pieces of guidance out. We've got regional networks now. We've got statewide trainings for teachers. They're using their own resources. They're building their required clock hours for certification in this. We're doing everything we can to put energy into this. Microsoft is stepping forward to say, we know teachers need a lot of support here. It's as transformational as anything we have ever seen in education.
And it's happening faster than anything you've seen in
education. And we
won't
keep up with it. So you got to stick with basic standards for kids and demonstrate that students know how to show you that they have knowledge. Move away from grading the workload and instead grading the critical thinking, and that is a change.
What about the teacher who's been teaching for 20 years, who has it down and doesn't have a lot of interest in this?
We face this kind of thing all the time, and my observation is when you show them the value to them and their students, they make this evolution. They're changing all the time. They're going to change, and they already are, because it's getting so sophisticated that when that assignment comes back, in short order, you will not know whether it was AI produced or not. So that kind of, I'm going to filter it out, I'm going to catch the cheater, that's almost totally unrealistic now. Instead, use class time to say, okay, if you wrote this or even got AI assistance, let's talk about what you learned, let's talk about critical thinking. How would you do it differently? Using class time to evaluate learning instead of just pushing out content knowledge, that's the skill. That's what you're going to hear from the experts on the ground, too. They've had to really rethink what the classroom looks like.
Okay, let me flip this on its head and kind of will buy into your argument that this is actually, it's happening and it's probably good, especially if done right. I'm hearing, I think I saw a 60 Minutes piece about how some school districts are already trying product that Conmigo is well, the Khan Academy company, I guess, is putting out, and frankly, it's a nonprofit, I think, but Conmigo is an in-school, it's also an at-home tutor. So I was watching that and thinking, that looks pretty cool, because it could take the essay and help give annotated feedback to the student, not telling them how to fix it, but giving them some suggestions so that they can go rewrite, and then they can actually put it in again and get sort of more feedback and have this iterative process. That looked potentially pretty productive. So then I thought, well, how are we going to make sure that all kids get access to that, and that we don't just exacerbate or recreate the divides we already have in schools between the haves and the have-nots?
Yeah, so 20 years ago, we were talking about how do we buy everyone hardware, a device, and 10 years ago is how do we get them all connected, right? That's slowly happened, and that's been very positive. And now we're at how do you get them access to potentially licensed products that give them the best tools in the world. Again,
and the teacher, again, who's equipped and knowledgeable about how to incorporate it.
This is the challenge of basic ed. So when we walk into the legislature and we say things are evolving so rapidly, you need to train your teachers over and over again. They're professionals. They always need training. Folks have to invest in that. It doesn't just magically happen. As far as students getting access to the tools, we're going to start with a little baby step this year on math, asking the legislature to make an investment, because there's a point in which we should buy statewide licenses to get scaling on price so that every student has Conmigo math, if that's the product we choose, instead of saying
you want there to be an
district by
AI
district.
math portal that is available to all 295 school districts.
We have the potential in this country right now on just about any subject to license a tutor, if you will, so students are moving at their own pace and maybe at home, in just about any subject that's going to be far cheaper to purchase at scale than to have 295 school districts each go out and negotiate their own pricing. And we should be doing that yesterday.
And there will be an ask of the legislature this year to fund something, a pilot?
Take a little baby step on that in math.
Do you know how much?
Well, we're going to ask for roughly $10 million, and some of that will be teacher professional development around our learning standards, and some of it is going to be this idea of accessing these tutors.
So again, in terms of not exacerbating the wealth gaps and opportunity gaps we already see in school districts, how do we ensure that the kids in the Lake Washington School District or kids going to school within 3 miles of Microsoft are not the only ones getting access to this versus a kid in Pierce County or in a lower income community?
Show the legislature and lawmakers exactly what they're getting from the purchases of these. Show them why it is an injustice to leave it up to local districts to do it or not do it, and then lean into that purchase as part of basic ed. Right now, the legislature gives money to districts and says every 7 or 10 years you're going to adopt your own curriculum. Well, some of them are financially distressed and they go 10, 15 years without adopting a curriculum change. So this is one of those tug and pulls between the state purchasing statewide opportunities, but local decisions on how they're going to implement it. This is where our legislature has to get past the 100-year-ago idea that they just send money out by formula and good luck to everybody. There are things we can do at a statewide level. Take, for example, our high school and beyond plan. We've purchased a statewide license so every single student by late elementary, middle school gets access to an online tool where they can build their future. They can put in their grades, they can put in their resume, they can design their future. Every kid gets access to that tool. And it's very scalable at that price. And that's what we're going to have to do in math, language, and probably some other subjects.
Do it at a statewide level, make the licenses available, and push them out to school districts.
With adequate training.
With training.
Yep.
So again, let's talk timelines and horizons. Kids go through school very quickly, I'm realizing. Public policy moves slowly by comparison. How long is this going to take?
Well, the good news is we told districts essentially 2 years ago, go embrace this. So they're using a lot of their existing dollars, their levy dollars, their state apportionment dollars. They're already embracing this.
And we're going to hear in a few minutes from some local educators who are using it.
So the first thing is give people sort of intellectual permission to go explore and go figure it out. And in the meantime, we've got learning standards that are coming on that are new that will look into this and address it. And we'll start with the legislature to say, start putting your own money into this thing. Because if you wait until it's perfect, it will be a decade from now, and the inequalities will be massive. So part of it, I'm sorry, but this is innovation. And our lawmakers have to think like CEOs trying to be ahead of the competition for 5 or 10 years. And our competition's sitting all over the world right now. We're top 6 in the world in reading by 15-year-olds. We're only middle of the pack in math. So if we want to be the best nation in mathematics, the way we are nearly in literacy, you better invest now in the tools that will dominate the marketplace in 5 or 10 years.
So going back to talking about test results, connect the dots. How do you think AI will help close the gap on student performance? Convince me of that.
AI is going to give students the ability to design their learning in a way that takes them right to what is needed to be successful. But today, that might be teaching a kid who needs to be, who wants to go into an apprenticeship program to be an electrician, the basic algebra to be an electrician, with applied understanding of white wire, black wire, ground wire. They're going to be able to customize their future, and I'm promising you something. That will never be on a standardized test. You will never see a test that allows a kid to say, hey, I really got my algebra this way or my geometry through construction. That test is always going to look at the kid who's academically prepared to go to a traditional university environment and do traditional academic mathematics. That is great for half of our kids, and we get more than half our kids ready. The test will never be ready to do what you and I want it to do, which is test that student's individual ability to show that they're ready, unless we move the test to an individualized platform like AI. I studied this way, I designed my curriculum, now test me on that, as opposed to every student on the 6th of May is going to take exactly the same test, whether you are a student with profound disabilities in 4th grade or a student who's already in a highly capable program. Why are they getting the exact same test on the same day?
Well, what is the reason?
Because the federal government mandates it.
And if they didn't mandate it?
We could do a ton of innovation in the state to customize our assessment, still teaching and testing all to the basics, but all of this customization that's coming, we would be able to do that in a way that Washington State thinks is best.
So you're saying this is a federal mandate.
Has been for 20 years.
Putting us in a box.
Yep.
And limiting flexibility.
That is exactly right. 12 states have decided to be in the Smarter Balance box, of which we are second in those 12 states in reading and 4th in math, so we do really well. It is ancient.
Could we get out of that box and try something else that the other states are doing?
Not without the feds, because only 1 or 2 states have gotten a waiver, and their answer is to test students even more during the year to get out of the single standardized test.
Just briefly before I let you go, I understand you're recruiting for a chief education officer. Pretty good salary, $150,000, $200,000, to be the principal advisor engaging with the superintendent, cabinet leaders, legislature, tribal nations, external partners, and national forums on innovation, inclusion, and continuous improvement. Isn't that your job? Why do you need a chief education officer?
Because that's a day-to-day job that's very much internal, and so I'm very external. So this is your, in a university world, this is your vice president of academics. I've got one of those for business as well, and a chief of staff who runs the organization. But
this is a brand new position then?
No. It's somebody who's done an amazing bit of work and is moving on, and so
it's the existing position. So you're recruiting for it. I guess the question then is, why fill that position given how tight the budgets are?
Oh, because if you don't have an academic visionary to go along with your business folks as part of your team, then it's trouble. This is a person typically with a PhD or somebody who actually has a background in educational administration. And I am very external. I set vision for the state. These are implementers. So they've got your secondary team, your special ed team, your school intervention team. These are your vice presidents of university equivalent in this role, and I'm looking forward to filling it.
Okay. Superintendent of Public Instruction, Chris Reykdal. Appreciate you coming in to talk about AI. When we return, so how are teachers using AI in the classroom already? How is it changing how students learn? We'll hear from 2 frontline educators when we return, back after this.
I feel like I had it kind of easy. My drug of choice was heroin when I was out there, and just in the last 5 years, heroin doesn't exist anymore, and it's fentanyl. And fentanyl is a lot harder to get off of than heroin. The withdrawal times are longer and they're more severe. Fentanyl is in abundance. It's everywhere, it's cheap, it's plentiful, and it's causing so many more overdoses. But our detox centers and our insurance hasn't really caught up to that.
And welcome back to Inside Olympia. Our focus this week is on artificial intelligence in education. Joining me now are 2 district-level educators. Adam Aguilera is an English language arts teacher at Cascade Middle School in Vancouver, and Cassondra Smith is an education technology coordinator with the Battleground School District, also in Southwest Washington. Welcome both of you to Inside Olympia. Thanks for being here. Very interested to hear, now that we've heard from the state superintendent, who's at the top, looking out at all 295 school districts, how this is actually working on the ground in your districts. So let me hear from each of you a little bit about your backgrounds and when and how AI started to be brought into the classroom, brought into the educational environment? Let me start with you, Cassondra.
So
You were an art teacher, right?
Yeah, I was. I started out as an art teacher at a K-8 school in our district, and then transitioned into the tech department that I worked with VR as kind of the
Virtual
art.
reality.
Yeah, and my students created VR art, and that was my connection to the tech department, and used tech in the classroom, and so then transitioned to help support tech integration in the classroom. And so now I train teachers and help with that technology support and integration. And with AI, I was really excited because I like that innovation. So with VR, that was kind of that new and exciting technology, and how that can help students find something that they're excited about with technology. And so with AI, that was another area, something new that students can benefit from. And so it really was about 2 years ago when AI started to really get a foothold, and we got the human-centered AI guidance from OSPI, and that really helped our district get a kind of foundation and grounding and guidance. So we had a way to start building our own policy and a direction for how to support teachers first. That was our first.
Start with the teachers.
Yes.
Then we'll get to the students.
And
Okay.
then students.
Right. So let me stop you there, and we'll pick up when we come back to you and sort of then what happened. Adam, let me go to you. You are an English as a second language teacher.
English language arts teacher.
Oh,
but,
English
but
language-
I am,
got it.
this year I'll be teaching a first period class supporting English
got
as a
it.
second language students.
Okay, but you're an English teacher, so this is perfect because I was just talking to the superintendent about how is this going to affect students trying to write their essays and learn to think. So as an ELA teacher, what frontline teacher in the middle school in Southwest Washington, AI roars onto the scene. One view could be, well, that looks like a big distraction and like it's going to stop kids from having to think independently. We'll keep that as far from the classroom as possible. Or it's here, it's going to be part of their lives. Let's incorporate it. Kind of help us understand how you approach this.
Yeah, well, my background in general is my whole life has been spent in the classroom. My parents are retired educators themselves. I'm kind of that millennial first generation adopter of the computer coming into the classroom, the internet coming into the classroom, and then becoming a teacher to start incorporating that technology with my own students, where I've now been teaching for getting close to 2 decades now as an educator in Evergreen Public Schools. And in my time there, I've seen how students have adapted to different forms of technology, and our curriculum and instructional practices have done the same. Over the last few years, when I just had personally discovered OpenAI releasing ChatGPT, I realized that generative AI was going to begin transforming everyone's personal and professional lives. And the deepest impact that it was going to have in our society would, of course, be in our schools. And so I became very involved over these last few years in just helping to kind of raise awareness to this change that's happening. I feel fortunate to have been invited to serve on different task forces to help develop AI policies, and I appreciate the state superintendent inviting me on OSPI's AI task force, where we developed the policy that school districts in Washington state are now using with their students. And so it's been an interesting process, kind of starting at a place of just developing the policy and awareness around this technology in the classroom, and then now being at this point where we need to train everybody on this as soon as possible. Like, all of our staff in our school system needs to have intentional training around generative AI, so that we can even begin the process of making sure that generative AI is a part of every child's basic education in the K-12 system.
A part of every child's basic education, that is that fundamental and that important. Okay.
Yes.
We'll put a pin in that and come back to it. Cassondra, you were describing, let's start with teachers. So how did that, and it sounds like your district was sort of leaning in and trying to be an early adopter as soon as the superintendent's guidance came out.
Yeah.
How did that, What did that look like in practice?
We developed a 4-part AI in education training series, and that went really well. And so we've been having that training over the past 2 years so that teachers could explore, like, what is AI?
And was this mandatory, voluntary?
No, voluntary, yeah. So it was optional for teachers and started out with kind of our own early adopters, teachers that were interested, that could see that it was important and that they wanted to have that knowledge and be able to implement some of these tools and knew that this was going to be impactful for their students. And then we could get kind of the word out to other teachers that this was something that could impact their own instructional practice, could streamline some of the work that they were doing, and then also affect their students. It could help student access to work and boost inclusion for students and help students with that customization that we heard earlier. And then with the policy piece as well. So kind of the 4 parts of just giving the foundation. What is AI? What does it look like now? And the teacher part, then how does it affect students? And then the implementation.
It could essentially help make a teacher's job easier.
Yes.
And help a student learn.
Yes.
Okay, so Adam, you're also an early adopter. You're leaning into this, not running away scared from it. You're on the task force helping develop this statewide policy. Then at the district level and the school level, you're the teacher. You don't get to procure the technology. You don't write the checks. What's available to you? What does that conversation start to look like? Okay, the state says we can do this. How are we going to do it?
Yeah, well, I do appreciate that Evergreen Public Schools took OSPI's AI guidance and developed their own personalized policy for their school district. They have started the process of opening up some AI tools that we can use with our students as educators in our classrooms. One being, for example, securely AI chat, because then all the data is protecting student privacy and being an in-house system for an AI chatbot that students can use.
That's a
in the
platform that the
classroom.
district was, I imagine, already using, and so this was sort of an add-on.
Yes, it's an existing platform that offers a menu of different kinds of software. This is one of their newer ones of offering an AI chatbot, and that's one that our students have access to.
So how does it work? What's an example? Give us some real world examples of how AI is showing up in schools, in the classroom, how you're using it.
Yeah, well, it starts with a basic chatbot. So, students can interact with typing to this chatbot that responds to them in a conversational way. And it can help them with daily tasks, with their learning, providing kind of that tutoring kind of aspect of assisting students along with their learning. So in my classroom, for example, where we've integrated some of these AI tools into student learning, I found that it dramatically increases accessibility, because now with AI chatbots, you can ask it to translate it into different languages, and it instantly does that within seconds. And so I'm able to communicate with my multilingual students in a way that I haven't been able to do before. Same with my multilingual students to me. I've been able to help students that were really struggling with motivation to create some of their own storytelling by helping them to build a story together, utilizing an AI chatbot, and just seeing kind of their own creativity light up in front of them with the output that we worked on together for the prompt. Was really amazing to see that with the students.
So what would then, once they've engaged, let's drill down on that example for a moment. If the student engages with the AI to sort of spark their creative mind, then what is the task or the assignment that follows on that? Would you say take that conversation and now turn that into a story, for instance?
So an example of what I did with one of my students was really struggling with the concept was that we sat down together, we inputted a prompt of what kind of story ideas did he have and what he wanted to create. And I walked him through everything I would as an English language arts teacher. Let's talk about the characters. Let's talk about the setting. And we did that together. And the output of what it created from the student responding to those questions that I led them through created this amazing story that they felt very proud of. It was like their ideas, their concepts. And so by having that, just like we follow with the AI guidance from OSPI, HAIH, it's human-centered first, AI is the tool in the middle, and then you go back to it at the end with the human-centeredness again. And so what we did from that story is, okay, this is a pretty good story. Let's start tweaking it, editing it. And then he went through and he started changing it. And he actually ended up creating an alternative ending from the one that it initially gave as an output. So it's really powerful to see how it can augment student learning in a way where they can write and think so much more, because just the minute details of having to rewrite a draft, and you don't know a student's typing ability, writing ability, but to be able to accelerate that where they're thinking and engaging with their writing in a way that they haven't been able to before, I think shows the strength of how this tool can be responsibly used to augment student learning.
Okay, I do want to come back to a couple questions about that, but
I have a kind of a cool example that goes off of that. That's a tutor brainstorm piece. We use Magic School. That's another education-focused AI tool in our district that's similar, where it's protected data and it's all within our district, and teachers are able to customize those chatbot tools for a specific, either just for a specific student or for a project or an activity or for their class. And a seventh grade history teacher had set up a chatbot based on their writing rubric, based on their class, their assignment, and it was for students responding to a history text about World War II. And they have full control and access of what students are doing within that AI tool. And so the teacher was able to follow along and see what students were doing in using that tool and helping them get that tutor support, similar to a Conmigo style tool. And this student was really frustrated, did not want to do this work. It was a topic paragraph, an intro paragraph responding to this text, and started off asking the AI tool to write it for him.
do it for me, yeah.
Yep, do it for me. And the tool was like, I'm sorry, I can't do that, and was honoring the student's frustration. Was like, I know this writing is challenging, and doing it in a way that the student, it wasn't telling, like, talking down to him.
it wasn't patronizing.
Yeah, and so then it also helped support executive functioning. So it was breaking it down into smaller and smaller tasks until the student was ready to actually get started, until it was a step that he was ready to, okay, I can start here. And then ultimately this asking all these questions and getting to the core of what was required, he was able to get a really wonderful paragraph and was happy at the end, and he thanked the chatbot and had a great paragraph. And then he actually tried to go to the chatbot again in his ELA class because he had such a positive experience with it. It didn't work because it wasn't customized
for that,
yeah. But he was able to then talk to his ELA teacher about getting specific writing feedback because it did really help him successfully write that he felt proud of. And it was his writing, it just helped him get to there.
So I can see, and this is what the superintendent was talking about, sort of the idea that this AI can act as a tutor and a prompt and give individualized attention that no teacher's going to have the time to do for each and every one of their students. Let me go back, though, to the naysayers, Adam, who will say, look, even in that example you gave, isn't that still shortchanging the student's creative process, because in essence the AI jump-started or gave them ideas that really they should have had to find within them?
Yeah, and I would say that's why that the first H of the HAIH is so important, is because you do want to engage the student with their own ideas and learning and what they wanted to do. So when I had done that activity with that student, we walked through the same process I would with any student who would be handwriting their own story, with looking at, okay, what is the character? What is the setting? So the ideas of what actually made up the story were his. It was just formulated in a way together where the time spent to be able to write each individual word when that student was already in a place of being disengaged and not wanting to participate in the class helped me to get that student to move forward and complete the summative assessment, whereas it would have been more challenging to be able to do it another way.
Where do you think the critical thinking skills development opportunity is as you bring in AI? For instance, again, I'm not a millennial, I was taught you have to read the book or read the article, you have to do the analysis, take notes, annotate, do the analysis, come up with your own ideas, give credit where credit is due. The teacher's going to be looking for your ideas, though, not just repeating what was on the page. When you bring AI into the equation, how does it still leave room for that development of that muscle?
Yeah, I think that's the responsibility of the educator to exercise those different muscles that students have in their learning. So with my sixth graders, for example, we did an activity where they wrote their own personal narrative stories, and then we utilized the AI tool not in the drafting of those initial stories, but as an editing tool and as a guide. So then that muscle was exercised where students took their own original writing from beginning to end and then began editing it with an AI tool that showed them different grammar mistakes or different ideas of what they could do for a potential ending. And then they went and manually changed as part of the assessment that I gave them to make those fixes and then look at how they wanted to improve their story further and write that out themselves. So there's different levels that you can utilize AI for different formative and summative assessments that are exercising all of those critical thinking muscles and those basic skills that students need to learn to be successful.
So, go ahead.
I was also going to add some other tools that also help with the accessibility, that it's not always just in like the brainstorming, that some of the tools like within a Magic School or a Conmigo where you can provide access to features like sentence starters or checklists, things that break the task down even further for students that might need different types of support, different types of scaffolding for assignments, or the translation tool like Adam mentioned. So different types of AI-supported tools that are outside of just the brainstorming or writing feedback tools that can provide that access to different types of assignments.
Let's talk. So we've been talking about how students are applying this with obviously the teacher's involvement, but what are some ways that AI can help educators do their jobs better? I know you're stretched thin. You have a lot of students, especially in a public school. There aren't enough hours in the day. There aren't enough planning periods. So if AI can help you maybe automate or do some of the rote tasks, help you with grading, I suppose. But what are some ways you're seeing, and I'll start with you, Cassondra, as somebody who's looking at this sort of at a district level, where are you seeing AI coming in and helping the teacher?
We use AI a lot with helping to guide some of our like team level, like we have our professional learning communities, our grade level teams. We have been able to use AI at a district level to help with data-based in like discussions. A lot of times teachers at those meetings, those discussions, it's a lot of talking about data and having to do a lot of the preliminary work. So you're spending a lot of time getting things together.
Getting the data you would need to then discuss it.
Yes. And so we've been able to use AI to write app scripts, and so we can automate things.
Can you think of an example
on
where
our own
this was actually put into
spreadsheets for where teachers are able to input formative assessment data, and then the app scripts are able to create the graphs
And then they can sit down in the meeting and start talking about
see the
rather than
data
spend
right
it-
away.
rather than building it
Yes.
in meeting 1, 2, or 3, and
Yep.
then discussing
It's
it in
color
meeting 4.
coded and it's already there for those meaningful discussions.
Adam, I think I've read about teachers using AI to help with grading. I'm sure there's other examples, but how are you finding it as a useful tool for you as a teacher, not just in how you help your students?
Yes, particularly around lesson planning, for example. I think one of the powers of this tool is that you can adapt different pedagogical practices into the lesson plan. So saying that you want to create this particular language arts plan on a particular writing assignment, but you want to design the lesson plan around what our district uses as the workshop model. So I incorporate into part of the prompt the workshop model, and then I can also add from a universal design learning perspective so that it's more accessible and inclusive for all of my students, particularly my special needs students. And then I can even further add following the WIDA framework of language acquisition for students as well. And within seconds, it will take all of that and create a whole lesson plan that incorporates all of these nationally recognized pedagogical practices that empower me as a teacher to be far more productive and looking at student learning from a lot of other angles with a lesson plan that would have taken me hours to create individually. And then at that point, I can look at it, edit it further, tweak it further, and I'm able to create a lesson plan that is more supportive for my students to be able to have for that day. And so I think lesson planning and curriculum design is an incredibly powerful thing that generative AI can assist an educator with.
Just a couple minutes left. Do you see any downsides? I know there's going to be concerns about making sure that this is available across districts. It's equitably available. There's going to be probably some concerns with from parents and educators about ethics, about safety. Do you have any concerns, or are you learning maybe the hard way, some rules of the road about how to do this, what to do, what not to do?
I think that the kind of equitable access piece and the different student experiences. That was one. We had an AI summit where students spoke, high school students spoke, and they all mentioned that it depended on the class and it depended on the teacher how they were able to use AI and how they were taught about AI. And so hearing directly from students across the state, the wide range of AI literacy, that's a challenge. And so ensuring that we're training everyone and that all of our students are getting the AI literacy foundation is very, very important.
It can be implemented well or poorly, and the students will know.
Yes.
Okay. Adam?
Yeah, I have a whole list of concerns that I have, and that's why I wanted to emphasize that this tool needs to be a part of basic education for each and every student here in Washington State, because we have to teach our students how to use this ethically and responsibly, because right now they're already using it in the classroom. Their friends told them about it, so they're just generating essays. They're taking shortcuts in their homework because there hasn't been a teacher yet to teach them how to ethically and responsibly use it. There are so many school districts out there that are still just creating an awareness around it, but our students are already mass adopting it in the way that we've seen in higher education. I'm also concerned about deep fakes and that increasing cyberbullying and horrific levels. I'm also concerned about the continued digital divide expanding, where you have some school districts that are moving forward with this, and then other school districts that are basically disenfranchising students from their basic education by denying them access to something that they will be using for their personal professional lives.
Moving forward.
Okay, I do need to stop you both there. Adam Aguilera, teaching in the Evergreen Public School District down in the Vancouver area, Cassondra Smith with the Battleground District. This has been fascinating, and it really does help connect the dots from what we heard from the state school superintendent. Really great real-world examples. We'll have to have you back to talk about 2.0 or 3.0 here.
Absolutely.
Thank you again. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching Inside Olympia. We will see you again next week.